The Trumpet Daily is presented by Stephen Flurry. The program analyzes world news and history from a distinct perspective and compares current events to prophecies found in the Bible. The program also offers free educational publications, including the Trumpet News Magazine and books and booklets. The Trumpet Daily is produced at the Philadelphia Church of God's home campus in Edmond, Oklahoma, and its sister campus in Edstone, England. More information is available at thetrumpet.com.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
All right, the cold weather didn't seem to stop protesters from swarming a Minnesota hotel overnight, which they believe is housing ICE agents. This is still going on.
It all comes as a Minnesota judge holds a hearing today after ordering DHS to preserve all evidence from this weekend shooting.
In one instance, protesters attempted to push their way through a blockade that agents tried to form near a hotel's front door. The anger in the state has intensified after the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Alex Pretti.
Minneapolis Police Department, you're all under arrest. Sit down. This is the Minneapolis Police Department. You're all under arrest. Sit down on the ground. This is a lawful order from the Minneapolis Police Department. You are under arrest.
America's still under attack. I mean, Obama's out and God brought Jeroboam back, but Satan is still on the throne of this earth. He's still the God of this world. And you look at Minneapolis. We'll talk some about Europe today as well. The headline in one of the European papers, what we need is a new European superpower. I mean, that's coming. And then you get a glimpse of what's coming to the streets of America in the prophesied Civil War. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on this chilly morning. It's still cold for most of America. We had our winter storm over the weekend, I think 6-7 inches of snow, so that was fun and comes at a good time. A lot of the roads on campus were being cleared off yesterday so that the work week could get off to a rousing start, at least for those of us that live on campus. There's probably a few that didn't make it in to their places of work this morning because of the weather. But it is nice to get the different seasons and to hibernate a little bit. Today it's nice and sunny. It's already starting to melt just a little bit, although it's still cold. It's nice to see the robins return. I think I read, it seems like every time there's a huge storm, they show up. And I think I read last time that this happened when the campus was just flooded with them. that they typically descend upon more populated areas from rural areas when there's a big snowstorm, just so that they can find food, I guess, more easily. So, interesting little factoid. I probably got that totally wrong, but there you go. Beautiful, beautiful birds, those robins. So you look at the beginnings. Really what we're seeing, it's the beginning of civil war. And it's organized, as you'll see from some of the clips we play and the articles that we quote from. And then you look at headlines, the way that Drudge is even calling it a war. And a lot of people want it to be a war. And here the guy that got shot over the weekend, I mean, here he brought a weapon. Think about just how much the bleeding heart liberals, they desperately wanted those January 6th protesters to have weapons. You know, and they made it up where they could. Yeah, he took the fire hydrant and he was just bashing a head of a police officer. Now I guess it's totally fine to show up to a protest with firearms. Now you've got the radical left. You've got Obama's foot soldiers saying, hey, it's his Second Amendment rights. Just bring the gun to the protest, interfere with ICE officials trying to arrest the lady, and then when they try to arrest you, you resist. And then you have a gun on you. And so all the arguing, as per usual. Well, they got the gun first before he was shot. So it's an execution. Okay, got it. None of that when Ashley Babbitt was shot dead. She wasn't executed. No, she deserved it because she voted for Trump. Yeah, that's right. She wasn't executed or murdered. They just throw these terms around like those ICE agents woke up one morning and said, you know what, I'm going to go find, a white bleeding heart liberal and just gun him down because I want to kill him. The coverage on this, so much of it, it's criminal. Here, these people don't even know what they're agitating for. They want war. Their hearts are filled with the spirit of murder. And as I've said all last week, I mean, with respect to Donald Trump, we want a strong European superpower. Well, you're going to get one. We want war in the streets, say the other side. Well, you're going to get one. How much longer do you think we have? I mean, seriously, before Ezekiel 4 and 5 are being fulfilled. We're living through it. Here, Europe is rushing to build a superpower, a new German war machine. And then you've got these radicals probably bust in so that they can protest, even in the midst of frigid temperatures, the hatred. I mean, it's so intense. And by the way, our Celtic Throne performance was there in Minneapolis just a week ago. It seems like God's taking our young people right into the war zones with, by the way, a very hopeful, positive, uplifting, biblically oriented message. God is trying to reach out to this world and to help us see what we're doing to ourselves and why there's so much trouble everywhere you look. I've benefited so much, whether it's from Life and Teachings or Fundamentals of Theology, just the study into human nature, and together with that, the study of God's nature. They're polar opposites. And there's coming a time when everyone on this earth is going to finally yield to the laws and the government of God and build godly character. That divine nature, the way of love. This Telegraph headline, the plans to turn Europe into a new superpower. Ho-hum, here comes the European superpower. I'll get into that if I have time. I'll get into that in the second segment. But first, I just want to focus on, I don't know if you guys showed the Drudge headline or headlines. War, protesters storm ICE hotel. Government shutdown threat over funding. Citizens with rifles stand guard. And there you've got the additional one at the bottom. Obama, in red, resist. You know, my father, not that long ago, he said the migrants, the illegal aliens coming into the country, that these were like Obama's foot soldiers. And well, tomorrow's news today. Here they're being used as in some cases, they are the soldiers. They're coming in, and so many of them are committing crimes, rape, murder. And then ICE goes in there and tries to take care of law and order. And then the other foot soldiers, the radical left, the communists in our midst, they take to the streets to defend rape and murder. Surrounding a hotel that they think have ICE, it has ICE agents staying there. And Obama's cheering it on. I mean, on the one side, you've got Jeroboam, you've got MAGA, you've got the Christian religion, you know, the King's Chapel. You've got the federal government. I mean, at least the federal agencies are being run by the Trump people now. It's very different from Merrick Garland and those people. Jim Comey, you know, all the usual suspects. But, you know, as I said, Satan hasn't gone away. Obama's still around trying to, even though he's been silenced. I mean, we've said that. But still, he's going to try to stir up strife and division. This is what they do. He's a community organizer, which means actually he's a disorganizer, a divider in chief. And that's who Satan is as well. Yeah, well, hey, listen, we're bringing everyone together, and then it'll finally work. No, actually, that's what makes it worse. And then for the Jeroboam people, for their part, hey, listen, we're bringing everyone together. Everyone's coming on stage, and we're going to have world peace. No, that's actually going to make things worse. A silenced Obama, but you've got Democrat-controlled streets. Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, Tim Walz, he almost became vice president. I mean, these are hardcore liberals, basically calling for insurrection, and also benefiting from these riots, benefiting from the cover they provide over the Somalia scandal. Tens of billions of dollars just flowing into Minneapolis and then out back to Somalia, thanks to the U.S. taxpayer and the hardcore liberal Democrats that want to remove regulation and just make it easy to steal, to cheat, to lie. All the cities, all these blue states. You think is this sustainable? The United States of America, the American Spectator, peaceful protesters don't carry loaded pistols. It's so predictable. Here are these foot soldiers for Obama. I mean, if there's any kind of violence with a gun, the gun is to blame, but not for this one. No, this one, it's the ICE agents. I mean, they're fascists. They're Nazis. They're roaming the streets looking for who they can gun down. I mean, that man, he has a gun. He inserts himself into the middle of an arrest. Disruptive through and through. I mean, with the other lady, the good woman, she was driving the car and started taking off, and the guy in front of the vehicle, just a few months earlier, a migrant was dragging him from his car. He was speeding away, the officer hanging onto the car for dear life. I mean, what would you do? What if you were a law enforcement official? And yes, okay, you had a gun, but what if the guy over there had a gun and he's a criminal? Well, I suppose some would be a little bit on edge. I mean, they're hotels surrounded by crazies, bashing in windows. This is a ticking time bomb. Alex Pretti would be alive today had he not been armed while interfering with an ICE operation. Bottom line, they wrestled him to the ground, and the reason they were wrestling him to the ground is because they were not shooting him. The shooting started after they discovered he had a gun. That escalates the situation right away. And by the way, Kyle Rittenhouse, he goes to a protest with a rifle to protect himself, and they tried to kill him. And what did the bleeding heart liberals say then? He shouldn't be there with a gun. And now, well, of course this guy should be there with the gun. It's his Second Amendment rights. These people, they will never change unless it's getting worse. And we know that that's prophesied. 2 Timothy 3:13. It was hardly necessary to read the headlines Sunday morning to know that the corporate media, like Minnesota's irresponsible governor Tim Walz, would effectively accuse federal immigration officers of brutally executing Alex Pretti. I mean, do people really know what an execution is when they just throw these terms out there? No, it's inflammatory. It's meant to be, because we want more violence. We want more killing. Trump's the problem. Pretti was an anti-ICE activist who had just interfered with the apprehension of a criminal suspect and was violently resisting arrest when the officers realized he was armed. Those are the facts of the case. But now we've got to analyze the video. But where was his gun? And did an agent get it before they fired on him? Or did he fire it? Or did it misfire? It's just like the George Floyd thing. I mean, you can make it whatever you want it to be. You can fit it within your narrative, even if it's on video. Especially if it's on video. Because, I mean, just like any good Hollywood director, you can frame things perfectly. They did that for the Jan 6 hearings. No honest analysis of this episode could lead to, well, let me just back up. The Times falsely claims an agent had already removed Mr. Pretti's gun when two other agents opened fire, shooting him in the back as he lay on the ground. And that's quoting a Times, I guess the New York Times. No honest analysis of this episode could lead to this conclusion, says the American Spectator. It's important to recall that they are fired upon in the most sanctuary states to which they are deployed. Well, I'm kind of hitting bits and pieces. This is from Fox News over the weekend, clip 1.
This is just ICE acting in a city that already showed that they can't handle it. We saw what happened with the George Floyd riots, and now we see these guys continue to say these are peaceful protests. They're not peaceful protests anywhere. Here's what Donald Trump just told the Wall Street Journal in a 5-minute interview. He says, we're reviewing everything that will come out. We'll come out with a determination. I don't like any shooting. I don't like it. But I don't like it when somebody goes into a protest and he's got a very powerful, fully loaded gun with 2 magazines loaded up with bullets also. That doesn't play good either.
It's a ticking time bomb, as I say. Spectator says here, all of which brings us to the root cause of the Minneapolis insurrection, the desperate attempt by Tim Walz to distract the public from what may be the worst welfare fraud scandal in the nation's history. I mean, this is just like a mixed bag of corruption. This is the United States of America. This is not, South Sudan or some third world country that's been taken over by thugs and they rigged the elections and all those things. No, that's all happening here. Rigged elections, insurrections, fake insurrections, lying, cheating, stealing, money laundering, invite the world in, murder, rape. We are living in the last days. This is the end is near for Manasseh and for Ephraim as well. We have reached the apex of our power, going way back several decades. The United States reached its peak just a little bit later than Great Britain, the greatest empire this world has ever known. But now it's just a little island that's got its own problems with division, strife, corrupt leadership, violence. God intervened. He did intervene to save America by the hand of Jeroboam. But it's not going to last for a long time, that's for sure. You can see that. You can see it on the streets. And again, maybe, you know, the so-called peace, I forget the name, the group of peacemakers that President Trump, the Board of Peace, there we go, BOP, maybe that'll stick in my brain. Maybe there'll be some short-term victories, quote unquote. Yeah, look at what we did here. I mean, you're already hearing it play by the administration nonstop. We've ended 8 wars. We've ended 9 wars. Then you turn and you look at what's happening in Minneapolis. This is right at home. This is homegrown war. Yeah, we brought this on ourselves. We invited it in. And there's the dear leader. I mean, he's stirring it up. Oh, yeah, he loves, what an opportunity. Never let a crisis go to waste. It says it had already caused Walz to drop his re-election campaign. Remember that a few weeks back? Yeah, he can't seek re-election because it was so scandalous, this Somali thing, funneling billions of dollars into these businesses that didn't exist. People have to look at the United States and say, I mean, what the Somali people that are receiving the billions back home, what must they be thinking? This is amazing. This is like an unlimited gravy train. And then you got Ilhan Omar. For her part, she comes over, she's worth $40,000, and then overnight she's worth $30 million. And she must be thinking, this is great working in D.C. as a politician and then a part-time lobbyist as well, and a money launderer. It says here, it had already caused Walz to drop out of his re-election campaign, and it was about to result in his resignation when he decided to exploit the death of Renee Good and now Alex Pretti to change the subject. And the subject has changed. But there are real-world consequences. These so-called martyrs, they're actually just useful idiots for the movement, for the war. That's collateral damage. But look, it might save Tim Walz's career as a politician, as a governor. And so there you go. Look at what Fox News has to say about how quickly these so-called protesters were able to organize. And now some of them with weapons, with guns. Clip 3.
I say it definitely does feel organized to me, and I think you can tell these people are well connected. They are in communication with each other, and they are giving them instructions. This happened all so quickly. People knew where to go, and they are taking commands. This is an organized movement here. There's communication, there's food, there's notices, there's notifications. They got out here in a hurry, and they outnumber this police force probably by about 10-1 at this point.
It's obvious. J.D. Vance tweeted out, "This level of engineered chaos is unique to Minneapolis. It's the direct consequence of far-left agitators working with local authorities. Organized chaos, engineered chaos." You know, you step back from this for a moment and you think, given how crazy the reasoning is abroad, you know, the Board of Peace, let's invite Qatar in and Putin. And we'll all sit down and talk, and then there will be peace. Well, how about here at home we start the Board of Peace domestic version, and we invite Obama in, and what about Walz, Jacob Fry, get him in there. We want everybody in. We want them all in the domestic Board of Peace, and then we'll finally have peace. Why is it we can see that there is no way you can reason with these people, and at the same time, people believe Putin wants peace. Hamas, they'll lay down their weapons. The problem is with this world and the God of this world and the fact that we deceive ourselves because there's an arch deceiver who's just surcharging the air with his message, his broadcast, his attitudes, his moods. And you certainly see it on full display. And if you don't, you're blind. You're blind to the truth. You suffer from self-deception. Fox News, a coordinated web of encrypted chats, street alerts, and tracking of ICE abductors in a sophisticated database reviewed by Fox News Digital shows that agitators were already mobilized at the scene where 37-year-old Alex Pretti was killed minutes before any shots were fired. ICE and Border Patrol agents were there to arrest an illegal immigrant criminal, and Pretti and others were there outside a donut shop to meet them as part of a strategic pattern of organized interference with law enforcement operations. The encrypted signal messages obtained by Fox News in real time show that anti-ICE rapid responders were actively tracking, broadcasting, and summoning backup around federal agents outside the donut shop. It's all coordinated. The text messages, that when they showed up, where they showed up, and one of them with a gun. And then you've got Steph Curry, the basketball player, saying, yeah, these protests, they're beautiful. They're so beautiful. What is wrong with people? That you can't just look at the facts and say, the spirit of this is not right. Whether ICE is a little heavy-handed or not, they are going after criminals. And so for people to turn out and resist that and smash windows and bring guns, how is that beautiful? How is any of that beautiful? Well, people love the spirit of murder. They get behind it. Division, strife, yeah, let's promote it. Further on, well, this is Truth Social. President Trump said, I'm sending Tom Homan to Minnesota tonight. He's not been involved in that area, but knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough but fair and will report directly to me. Separately, a major investigation is going on with respect to the massive $20 billion plus welfare fraud that has taken place in Minnesota and is at least partially responsible for the violent, organized protests going on in the streets. Does Steph Curry think that's beautiful? The $20 billion in fraud? Minnesota is a criminal cover-up of the massive financial fraud that has gone on. That's President Trump. Well, he's right. But listen, just get a domestic board of peace and sit down and talk with Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar. And we'll get this solved. You see just how deranged the reasoning has gotten? There's no consistency. It's just cognitive dissonance all the way through. Over here it works, over there no. I mean, somewhere in between sometimes. When President Trump was at his sharpest, just as far as an understanding, my father said in Great Again, he really had a strength when he was coming under attack from all of the Obama's foot soldiers at home. He really had a strength for identifying the evil. Here's what's evil. These people cannot be reasoned with. And now we've opened up to the world the fact that, hey, let's just reason with anybody. In a lot of ways, the spirit of what Joe Obama did at the southern border, open up the gates and invite the world in, literally. I mean, people were coming in by the millions. The spirit is the same with, we'll open up the board of peace and we'll just let anyone in. That's not that different. You can see why God says, look, if you come into the church, God's family, you're coming out of this world. Jesus is not coming back to repair this world, to tweak a few things, to start a board of peace and to bring everyone together. He's coming back to start a new world. And you can see why. Whether you look at the streets of Minneapolis or whether you look at Davos last week, you can see why. You see the seeds of war everywhere you look. How much discernment did Herbert Armstrong have? I mean, he was writing about, riots in the streets, race riots. He was writing about explosions of violence, world war, great tribulation. And that's because it all comes right out of the Holy Bible. That's what Jesus spoke. That's what Jesus prophesied. It's just to make a point I made in class this morning. Jesus was expounding upon what it took to be a true Christian in John 6, following the miracle of the fish and loaves and Christ feeding 5,000 men miraculously. And he said, now look, the people that were there to get the message, they say, hey, we're children of Moses, and our fathers, they miraculously ate manna from heaven, so it's comparable to what we just witnessed here. And Christ said to them, your fathers ate manna from heaven and they're dead. They did get physical sustenance miraculously. But what I'm talking to you about is spiritual food, spiritual sustenance, bread from heaven. What are you talking about? He said later, I am the bread of life. We have to consume Christ. We have to dine on spiritual food. We have to be hungry. Paul said to Timothy, nourish up the brethren on the word of God, the words of faith and good doctrine. And you know what happened at the end of John 6? Most of the people walked away. They wanted no part of that. You're talking about a real commitment here. I guess you've got to be very convicted. You've got to be willing to make some life changes. Yes. How is that in any way like what is so popularly believed today? Just receive Christ in your heart. Just accept Jesus. It's so easy. You don't have to make any changes. Jesus did it for you. He was like a machine. Most of them walked away because they weren't prepared to do anything with that instruction. And then Christ looked at the disciples and said, are you going to walk away as well? And Peter spoke up and said, where else will we go? There's nowhere else to go in this world. There's nowhere else to turn. You have to be willing to forsake all. Luke 14, read it. To forsake everything. But see, you look at this world, and yes, there's violence and division and hatred everywhere you look, but there's also a love for this world. We still love it. We still want it. We're still attached to it. We're addicted to it. And you see what's happening. An explosion is coming. The Federalist had some, for the Federalist, this is some fairly strong rebuke for President Trump. While President Trump overzealously obsesses about acquiring Greenland and other foreign policy ventures, AI, and the swapping of Rhino Senator Bill Cassidy with a Rhino House member, the major American state is continuing its rapid descent into third world despotism. Can we get a little attention in Minneapolis, says the Federalist? Can we take care of some of these problems at home? Isn't that America first? It says here, members of the Trump administration quickly took to social media to pledge accountability for the incident. I skipped over the incident. I think it was when these radical left loons went into the church. They just broke in. Yeah, it's all right to commit trespassing in that case. If you're Ashley Babbitt, you're going to get shot dead. But in this case, just bust into the church, frighten the children, and make sure Don Lemon's there to report it. He knew all about it. Why aren't any of these people held to account? They should be in jail. Don Lemon should be in jail. Jacob Fry should be arrested for what he's doing. But it's not going to happen. No, we'll just get an angry tweet. We'll get some good commentary back and forth. We'll get some good analysis on a slow motion video. This side says that's what happened. This side says no. The opposite happened. But there's not going to be any calls for the Board of Peace to try to bring these groups together. Not here at home anyway. That's reserved for Davos. That is reserved for Putin and the Hamas supporters. A race war is prophesied. That was my father's article from 2 years ago. Immigration is one of the biggest concerns on Americans' minds in this coming election, yet most people fail to see the real danger. Why won't this is, again, during the last days of the fake presidency, Autopin, why won't politicians secure America's borders? Many conservatives believe Democrats are importing voters. That's true, but the plan goes beyond just that. Here again, listen, because this is tomorrow's news today. You didn't hear this message from anywhere else except from my father and the Trumpet magazine. He said there is also, it's not just to get Democrat voters from these illegal immigrants. He says there is also a plan to sow division, confusion, violence, and terrorism. Wow. These people are essentially bringing in foot soldiers for race war and civil war. That's at thetrumpet.com 2 years ago. It's pretty amazing. And later on, he says there's one man who has stirred the racial tensions and is responsible for America's open borders. Former President Barack Obama, the dear leader. The dear leader. That's from 2024. This one from March 2023. Again, making the same point. It's a slightly different subject, the article. But he says here, Obama has another plan to bring in soldiers who can sow division, violence, confusion, terrorism, race war, and civil war in America. That is the known plan of the communists, and many of those helping him are communists. Like I say, it is a mixed bag of corruption. It's a collection of just about every corrupt motivation. There's Obama's plan. It's a well-known communist plan. Bring down the government. Bring down the system. And then for Tim Walz, for his part, he's up there saying, you know, what else would be good? A nice side benefit here is we could get people to stop talking about Somalia and $20 billion going into Somalia. It's painful to watch. But this is what it feels like to see your country dying, to see your country committing suicide. Even if you leave aside the extreme cases of violence, rape, and division, and shooting, and all these things, just look at your typical, ordinary American or Russian or whoever. And you just see people, I mean, Satan is a master at getting us distracted away from what's important. Getting us just, our heads buried in the sand, our eyes just glued to screens, to movies, to music, award shows, social media, and not paying attention to what's really important. Here, God's given us one book, the most important book in the world, the most important book in the history of human civilization, the Holy Bible. And most people have exactly zero interest to even look into it. You know, Mr. Armstrong was talking about this back in the 1950s with the emergence of television and so on. And he's saying, yeah, we're losing new contacts or prospective members because they're glued to the one-eyed monster and they've stopped studying their Bibles. They're no longer interested. If that was the case, 75 years ago, how much worse is it today? We've had so much to say in recent weeks about just how different the world is today, even from what it was 40 years ago when Satan was cast down. Look at all of the dramatic changes in just 40 years' time. I mentioned earlier the fact that our Celtic Throne performers, they were in Minneapolis just a week ago yesterday. and some of them roaming the streets. It was relatively quiet. And then just 6 days later, you have the shooting on Saturday, and then the eruption of violence Saturday, Sunday, on through to today. God intervened. I mean, when he did it last summer, we had to cancel some shows there in Israel when it became a war zone. And God had to intervene just to get our performers, our musicians, our parents out of Israel and off to the UK where they had a few shows. And then Minneapolis. Minneapolis, we had over 1,000 people attend Celtic Throne last Sunday night. They just finished last night in Cedar Rapids, coming home today, the gang. But our biggest, for this mini tour, the biggest crowd we had was in Minneapolis. And I'm sure Satan wasn't very happy about that. My son was able to take to the streets of Minneapolis just to get a feel for what people were thinking about. Of course, the protests there didn't just start this past weekend. It's been going on for weeks. It's being stirred by these communist agitators because of Obama's foot soldiers. He was able to take to the streets to try to get the feel for, what the city, the local residents are thinking, given the fact that it's such a hot spot at the moment. Here's a bit of what he was able to get with some street interviews, clip 14.
So we are in Minneapolis. It's about 5 degrees outside and snowing, and we're going to interview some local residents on the events that have been happening in the city recently.
They got to get rid of they got to get rid of ICE. If ICE wasn't here, that woman would never got killed. Trump, I don't know. I think he's a good president.
I don't like any violence that the protesters are doing. My personal opinion, I think ICE is doing their job.
Okay.
And I know from a constitutional perspective, people have the right to assembly. I don't like the protesting. I just want peace and hope everybody, things get to be how they need to be.
The ICE agents have affected me.
How have they affected you?
Oh, they're abducting people left and right all over town with masks on, no license plates. They're crashing people's doors down. They won't give their names. They give no warrants. So basically, they need to get the fuck out of here.
Everybody has a right to be here. And like our mayor said, like the chief of police said, we're not worried about people's green cards and stuff like that. Everybody just wants to be able to make money and take care of their family. And that's simple.
Yeah.
It's not a lot to ask for. Like, we're not the creator. We're not the ones that can judge and say who can and cannot be here. We're all on borrowed time. This is all borrowed time. It's nobody's time to take advantage of. There's no need to use unnecessary force or kicking in people's doors or snatching them out the car, cutting their seatbelts off of them. It's a proper way to handle people. Everybody's going through things. It's a hard time right now. It's no time to be using excessive force. It's time to get an understanding of what's going on around us and come together, not to be bullies, not to, We living in a world to where everything gets corrupt. So if this they way to try to get some type of structure going back, then for all means, I understand. Safety is first. But for the most part, I say, once again, we living in a world where it's unpredicted. You just never know. So like I said, I'm raising my kids for the world that they going to be living in, not the world that I was once living in. So I'm just giving them knowledge on things as far as, especially with ICE, because they done been to their school a couple of times. So I believe in stand for something. If not, you will fall for anything in the world. Also, you got to remember ICE has his job too. They has their job. As a protester, you can, like I said, feed your family knowledge, show them by leading, by prime example, and to stay prayed up, because every fight ain't made for us to fight and every battle ain't meant for us to win. So with that being said, like I said, God, we can only just pray and hope that days get better.
I think the Border Patrol agents are a bunch of fascists, plain and simple. it's not about doing it right. It's not about getting the criminals, because they're going after anybody who's got a darker shade than you or me, you know? So you hear all this talk from the DHS and from the cabinet and from the presidential administration. Like I said, they're trying to go after the criminals. They're trying to go after the illegals. It's not about that. It's clearly not about that. You can see it on the streets. You read about it in the papers. So I think they're a bunch of liars.
It's really upon the people, because if you want ISIS to come in your city, right, and provoke and dictate and take away things that's already here, then why let it be when you should be the one standing up for your own rights as an individual instead of having a group? You should be yourself alone and do what's right by standing yourself and protecting your rights of a person, right, and doing what's right in America instead of being a follower and be a leader. We need to change. What I mean is, we need to come together at a table, bring all the heads, and come with some conclusion to where we can adapt to our own way of society of living and not be against each other. That's what I'm seeing today in society, is that people don't care no more. All they want is me. They don't care about the next person.
Have you been following this story at all in the news?
A little bit here and there. I don't really focus myself too much on that. Doesn't affect me, so.
Winston Churchill said the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And that's really what we experienced today. Most people kind of took the perspective of, doesn't really affect me, so why bother? And then the second largest camp, I would say, would be people who just didn't make sense. Like, I honestly just didn't know what they were saying.
There you go. Our roving reporter, about 300 meters from the Target Center. That's where the protest turned violent over the weekend. A week later, after our show was there that Sunday night with 1,000, 1,100 people on hand, there is hope. I mean, God has a solution. And the solution is in His holy word. It's in that hopeful message that you receive in both Celtic Throne 1 and the second show as well. This was a review of the show that came in from one of the Minneapolis papers. It says, on a cold January night in Minneapolis, the State Theater felt anything but wintry as Celtic Throne 2, Psalter of Ireland, unfolded on January 18th, 2026. The audience was carried into a world of ancient history, pulsing music, and remarkable young talent. The production goes far beyond a typical Irish dance show, offering a richly layered performance that blends dance, live music, singing, and athletic feats into a compelling theatrical story. Developed by Herbert Armstrong College and Armstrong Dance with original music by Golden Globe nominated composer Brian Byrne, Celtic Throne, listen to this, Celtic Throne 2 tells the story of Olav Fola, a legendary 6th century BC figure whose journey from the Near East to Ireland helped shape the island's traditions of law, education, and the arts. The narrative begins with the fall of Jerusalem in 585 BC and follows Olav and his companions, including Princess Teffy, as they establish a new cultural foundation in Ireland. That's what this world is about to get. A new cultural foundation, a new government, a new system of education. As I said earlier, I mean, Christ isn't coming back to fix or repair this present evil world. This present evil world is exactly that. It's evil. God is going to replace it with a holy world. God is going to replace it with a world full of people aiming for perfect, holy, righteous character God's character, God's nature, God's love. Mr. Armstrong defined it as an unselfish, outflowing concern for the good and welfare of the one loved. You don't see much of that on the streets of Minneapolis. And as my son brought out there, I mean, even if people aren't caught up in, I mean, there were some nice comments. The lady that said, hey, we need to stand for something or we're just going to fall for anything. And we need to set our children an example. We need to feed our family knowledge. I would add God's knowledge. True education. And she also said, pray up. And I think we need to pray earnestly. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. My father said many years ago about prayer, he said, if you can't get fervent and excited and put your heart into your prayers, how's God going to put his heart into his response? We need more godly emotion. We need more godly energy. We need more of God's thinking. This Olivet prophecy, Matthew 24, well, there's some pretty dark times ahead of us, and they're prophesied in this prophecy. If you look at verse 29, it kind of all culminates in this period of great tribulation. It says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heavens shall be shaken. I mean, what a time. Is this going to happen? Has it happened before? Was Christ just kidding about it? It says, and then, well, the shaken heavens, it says there, and then verse 30, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. Why would the nations of this earth mourn the arrival of Jesus Christ? Because our thinking has become so deranged, so delusional, so illogical. We need re-education just to be able to think straight, just to be able to embrace and applaud and celebrate the kingdom, the government of God. It's God's government. And yet man's track record has been that of fighting it. There's a built-in hostility because of Satan's broadcast. There's a built-in hostility toward God's law because of an unwillingness on our part to repent. And repentance means doing. It means taking action to change. God says here regarding this blessed event, well, let me read verse 31, and he shall send his angels with great sound, a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. That's Matthew 24, verse 31. And so these are all events that lead up to the return of Christ to this earth. But notice what he says later in the sermon, the prophecy. It says, watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord does come. Jesus is coming. And God says, watch. In Luke's version, Luke 21, it says, watch and pray. Pray fervently. Draw close to God. It says, but know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered the house to be broken up. Therefore, verse 44, be you also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man comes. 2 verses later, it says, to be found doing, to put your heart in the work, to finish the work. God, in John 5, it says God works and Jesus works. They're both good workmen. And their purpose and plan is that we follow in their steps and pour our hearts into their work so that we can build that holy and righteous, godly character. That's all we have time for on today's show, the fastest moving hour in broadcasting. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show, and we'll see you again tomorrow.